Kat, welcome back to the Diesel podcast. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today and being able to
Yeah,
connect with you like post SEMA and see kind of how that went. And then people really loved those episodes we did earlier in the year where you were talking about different problems you see with different trucks and what people can do to maybe try to avoid them or what the fixes are. So I wanted to catch up with you on that front as well.
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. No, it's good to be back. Just got back from SEMA just the other day, so it was a good year. Been going to SEMA on and off for the last almost 2 decades. I think the first time I went to SEMA was in 2008. It's kind of been the same dog and pony show for the last 20 years, but the last couple of years they've changed a lot. I mean, just the Las Vegas Convention Center itself has I think damn near doubled in size. Like a lot of the buildings this year that were there weren't there the previous year. So, and they've invested a lot more time and money into seminars. Like if you went there this year, you'd notice that upstairs in the convention center as well as in the Venetian for Apex, that's where they had all the classes. So they had a bunch of classes and courses that were being taught for um, just product management, shop management, for employees, just diagnostic tools, or just in general and how to run your business more efficiently. But they had a bunch of courses this year. And then obviously, of course, all the kind of same stuff downstairs, outside with all of the kind of the standard vendors, manufacturers, your wholesalers that are there, getting to see the new products that are either going to be coming out or are out and will be available for pre-sale by the end of the year. So there was a bunch of good products that they did have out that specifically that we saw that PPE Diesel is gonna have coming out, which for some maintenance products, as well as Fleece has some really good ones that are going to be coming out too that pertain to the maintenance system, which will cover a lot of the open tech bulletins that they have out that Ram Chrysler has out for oil consumption as well as Ford. So there was some really good information this year.
It's pretty cool stuff. What with the courses, was this the first time they had this amount of courses or it was so involved?
Yes. So every year they obviously offer courses. Typically, it had always focused on primarily like SEMA, having like their SEMA Advantage classes. Obviously the EPA having theirs. And then like, Ford, Chrysler, GM, Toyota, like some of the bigger manufacturers that have some of the big booths there would have their own courses and seminars. But this year, I think that this was the first year where there was like over, I think, like 300 classes and options that you could choose from between going to the ones that were at SEMA or at the Venetian at the Apex show. And then, of course, the two different shows for their seminars, they obviously focus on two different aspects. So if you've ever been to the show, SEMA primarily focuses on, aftermarket products that you physically would put on the vehicle. Apex focuses more on tools and equipment, and stuff like that, which Apex did have some automotive stuff there as well, as far as like accessories and stuff goes. But Apex primarily is always focused more on that part of stuff. Like the auto auth unlock. If you have a shop, you're very familiar with that software. You have to have it if you want to deal with any 18 or newer Cummins. Any of like I think Top Don was in that area as well. Snap-on, Mitchell's, Pro-Demand, all of your standard diagnostic devices. That's normally where they are at, and they were in there as well as some other companies as well. There are some newer ones that are out for some diagnostic software, and they also cover normal shop software for as far as service writing goes, or scheduling and stuff like that, or time management for your technicians and employees.
Hey, Diesel fans, we want to give a shout out to our friends over at Kershaw Knives. They have a 20% off code. So if you add some knives to your cart, add code 20 TDP 2026, you get 20% off of MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different handle designs, different opening mechanisms, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So if you're in the market, head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 20 TDP 2026 and get 20% off your cart. Were there any that you took that I'm sure they're all very helpful, but were there maybe one or two or a handful of them that really stood out to you as incredibly beneficial as a shop owner to go to and you learned a lot through that course?
Yeah. So one of the last course that I took that I was there, it was primarily focusing on time management. And I mean, I kind of thought that would essentially, not to be an oxymoron, be a waste of my time. But it was not. As far as they go through and cover on, you have red time of your day, or green time of your day, and how to properly manage it, and as how, as a business owner or owner operator, majority of the time you do tend to micromanage, which he did stress, that's not a too terrible thing to do. Is, that, if you do micromanage, obviously you are covering all aspects of your shop because you have your hands in everything and you're supervising everything. But within reason, you have to be able to step away, because that's why you hire these employees. If you have an employee there that you're constantly having to be, hands-on and having to supervise, and they're always having to come back to you and ask you questions, like, how do I do this? Or what do you think about this? The biggest part, I think, of that class was learning how to either, step back and try to relinquish control to that said employee, 'cause that's why you hired them. If they still consistently do that, he was like, why do you have them on your team then? You know, you hire them to do that job. Your time as an owner operator is significantly more important and expensive. You have other things that you should be doing, and just kind of trying to help you manage your time and delegate it, and how to say, okay, with this job, you need to call this customer back. Do you have to do that? Or can you delegate that to, your parts guy, your counter guy, or to, the other employees in the shop. So that one was really good, is trying to force owner operators to kind of step back and lean more on your team and put a little bit more faith into them, which instills, kind of better, I guess, what is the word? If you don't trust your team or your employees, they can feel that. And obviously, there's not really going to be a good connect there.
Yeah.
If you're constantly having to supervise them and micromanage them. And if you can take a step back, that help instills faith in them and gives them a little bit more confidence in their job, which in turn can help them be a better employee or not. This is the pass fail. This is either going to work or it's not. And you're going to realize that, this may not be a good fit as far as the employee goes, and somebody that you need to look at. And you need to move on from that person and maybe get somebody else in that can fill that space better, to help, obviously with production, making more money, because that's why we're doing this. We're not self-employed for fun. This isn't fun by any means. I mean, sometimes it is, but for most people that are self-employed, anybody who's self-employed will, if somebody came up and asked me today, I want to be self-employed, I'd be like, are you high? Um, there's most days where it's like, God, it would be so nice to be able to wake up and just go to work and get a paycheck. Not my monkey, not my circus, not my pig, not my farm. But so that class was really good. There was another one that was a psychology course that kind of ties into the team management one, on just kind of learning how to connect with your employees and how to kind of see their thought process on how they do things, just because it's not necessarily the way you want something to be done, it's not necessarily wrong. Um, the big thing is learning to trust your employees. And if you can't, then you either need to invest more time in training them, whether you are doing it hands-on, you are sending them to, seminars like we did, or you are beating a dead horse and you need to let them go and find somebody else that is going to be a better fit for your company and you. Because you'd be, I guess, surprised. At least I was surprised as far as myself as previous employees that I'd had for how long I had had them, and I shouldn't have. I should have let them go a lot sooner than I did. And there were a lot of other shops that were in the, in that class that were in the same boat. Probably 80% of them were in the same boat that were like, hey, yeah, we had an employee that we wanted it to work out. We wanted them to do better, but it's like they just didn't. And it was just something that they're like, hey, there's nothing wrong with being friends with your employees, but there needs to be a line there.
Yeah.
You can't keep them on to give them a paycheck to do them a favor because that's just not the way things work. Especially as an owner operator, you're not supposed to be doing that. You can't do that. You're going to slit your own throat and your business is not going to make it. So there was that one, and then there was another one that covered proper, I guess, billable time as far as scheduling goes in jobs, and how on average today now, if you have a vehicle that is 10 years or older, when you are doing billable time, you're not supposed to do, set billable time. Like if an oil changes half hour, you don't bill a half hour. The vehicle it's 10 years old. There's a very good chance that the oil pan could have a stripped, drain plug pan. The plug could be bad. There's going to be a lot more time that's going to be involved in that job that most shops now, you're not billing book time. You're doing 120% of that said billable time. And just kind of going through that and the reasonings behind that and why, and very informative, and it does make sense. And it's something that, I mean, you do eventually book for, but you do it after the fact, and then having to explain that to the customer, and then it just kind of makes for a little less of a good customer experience when you're having to do it after the fact. And if it was just something that could have been explained, to start with. And just be like, hey, yeah, this is only should be 30 minutes, but just so we're clear, truck's 10 years old. You've had how many oil changes in your life? Have you ever, had to have this replaced, this replaced? No. Okay. Chances are that's probably going to be a thing.
That psychology part really interests me because I don't see I don't see a whole lot about it discussed, and I'm not sure if it's because it's automotive and it's mechanical in nature
Hmm.
and that sort of stuff, but I think I identify with that part the most because I'm kind of in the same boat with what I do. And like 2 or 3 years ago, my beard was black. Now it's gray. And I'm like,
Well, it's
turning
okay. That
it.
that's not bleached. It's not bleached. That's
No,
where
like
you pay.
there's no kind of roadmap for like how do you handle stress or how do you manage your time better? Because you're right,
Yeah.
it's not fun. It's very challenging and rewarding, but it's not necessarily fun. And
Right.
I don't think in the mechanical side that's talked about. So that would have been something I was definitely interested in. One thing I wanted to ask you about SEMA before we get into the truck, stuff and things you're seeing in the shop was there anything about AI and how that is changing industries? Like I'm starting to see it with customer service a lot, and I'm not going to lie, I love AI customer service. Unless I have a personal relationship with somebody or I've gotten to know them over time, it's so much more efficient. I'm just curious, like, how did that factor into the automotive side, um, either through
So
courses or discussions?
they did cover it in some of the courses, but I also did see it in, God, what was it? I have it on, I stuck with my iPad, go figure. But I saw my notes on there that there is a program, a service rating program that uses AI as you are putting in the customer's information. So you have a customer scheduled for diag and he has X, Y, and Z issues. That program has AI built into it to access because you plug it into like your Mitchell's, your Pro Demand, any other software that you use for diagnostics, any of your scan tools, you log that into that software and it uses AI to go into that software as well. And it fills out damn near what you should do as far as diagnostics. So, like when we go under Mitchell's or Pro Demand and you put in the year, make, and model of the truck, and you put in the check engine code, or you just type in what the issue the truck's having, and it says, hey, you need to start here, check this X, Y, and Z first. As the service writer is filling in the information for the customer for the work order for the technician, AI is already pulling that stuff for you and filling it in and putting it on the work order.
Wow.
So, which makes it, I guess, a lot easier as far as the service writers goes and who's helping out the customer, because how often do you do that? The customer drops off and then they tell you what's going on, and then they're like, okay, so what are we gonna do about this? And service writers are like, which is fine. They're not technicians. I mean, they have a basic knowledge of a vehicle on, how it works. Obviously, if you're taking a turbo off, you need to know you got to take X, Y, and Z off. That's got to come off too. But for that software will start kind of putting in some of that information for the service writer that you can kind of give back to the customer when they had dropped off and said, okay, hey, your vehicle's doing this, we're going to do this. Especially with like Mitchell's and Pro Demand. I mean, just for example, there's open tech bulletins. We've talked about this before on the newer Fords with oil consumption.
Yeah.
We have a 2020 truck that Ford gets dropped off that has oil consumption, and you fill out that information with the VIN number. That software is going to use AI to go into Mitchell's and Pro Demand and pull up the open tech bulletins for that VIN number, and it's going to pull it over to that. And the tech and the service writer is going to say, oh, well, there is an open tech bulletin for your vehicle for your make, model, year, blah, 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 manufacture date because of this, because of the crankcase filter. So we're going to check that. We're going to do that. So that was pretty cool. So that's where I saw that AI was kind of integrated into that. And that was the first time that I've seen that.
Kind of factors into that time management you mentioned before with that course and something like
Mhm.
AI being able to help with it.
Yeah, that it's not something, that the service writer is filling out that information and then, stopping to grab a technician and be like, hey, so what are we going to address first? He's not stopping at a technician. He's not, grabbing me or Matt to be like, hey, the customer's wondering this. And I would try to not be a total see you next Tuesday and be like, we're diagnosing the truck. Tell him to wait until we are done diagnosing it. Dude just dropped it off. He's not getting his answer now. Because if he gets his answer now, he just dropped it off. We spend an hour looking at it and we give him the exact same answer that you just fucking told him. He's not going to want to pay for his hour of diagnostic now, is he? So there is a slight, I guess, it can help, but it needs to be used appropriately.
Yeah.
So it
Uh,
can help time management and but could also bite you in the butt.
yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that integrates, and it's a it's like a revolution that can't be stopped. It's going to change
Oh
industries.
no,
I'm
it's gonna keep going. It's gonna keep coming with us, and it's gonna be learned. You're gonna have to learn on how it's going to work for you and how. No, let me rephrase that. How you are gonna make it work for you, not how it's gonna do the other way around. You need to learn how you're gonna make it work for you, and not how it's gonna help you.
Makes sense. So last time that you were on the podcast, we did like a Cummins Duramax Power Stroke like basically what's wrong with all of them from what you see in the shop. And I was really curious if you're still seeing those same trends with either, all three of them or one of them, or if maybe if something new has popped up where it's a maintenance thing or maybe an OEM part that's failing at a different mileage. But what you guys are seeing there day to day.
So right now we've seen a lot of L5P injection pumps failing, like a lot lately, like in the last year, shockingly. I mean, we were all kind of questioning on how long they were going to last since they're not, since they went away from a Bosch pump and they went to Delphi. And we've been seeing a heck of a whole lot fail, which when we were at Apex, stopped and talked with Alliant Fuel Products, and they are actually getting a DCR pump made to go on to a L5P,
Oh, wow.
which will be really nice because the DCR pump flows just as much fuel as the pump that's on the L5P now. And because everybody comes back and says, well, we already have a CP3 conversion, why would we go with the DCR? Well, because you can literally just do the DCR. When you do a CP3 conversion, now you have to change the lift pump because the lift pump that's on the L5P now is too much for a CP3 conversion. And then half the time you also have to tune the truck on top of that. So with the DCR kit that's going to be coming out for the L5P, it will be a true drop-in replacement. You will not have to do anything else. You will not have to change the lift pump. You will not have to change any of the sensors. You will not have to reprogram it. Nothing. So that was really nice to see. Gave you a little warm, fuzzy feeling inside because there's nothing worse than when you start seeing a trend happening with these injection pumps. And I'm just like, God bless America. I don't, because we do have a lot of customers, they don't want to do a CP3 conversion. They don't want to have to tune the truck. They don't want to have to put a Fass on there. They just, they want to be able to put a pump back on the truck and call it a day. But we
Yeah.
had one truck where it was a 21 L5P, and at 60,000 miles, he lost his injection pump. No explicable reason. GM wasn't sure how or why, so they just replaced the pump. And then 15,000 miles later, it did it again. And then he came to us and we put it on, and we did just a brand new one from GM. Got it from the dealer, wasn't reman, and that pump went bad in 2,000 miles.
Wow.
And I mean, eventually that customer, I mean, he got rid of the truck. He got sick of dealing with it. On that last pump that we had put on, we went through everything on it. I mean, we dropped the tank because we were looking for some kind of restriction. We were looking for some kind of insufficient fuel flow, something that was causing this pump to fail prematurely. It made zero sense. Unfortunately, we couldn't physically find the only thing that we could find that we weren't happy that the customer wasn't exactly doing was at every stage the pump was just replaced. There was no other in-depth cleaning that was done. Like the only other thing that he allowed us to do was clean the fuel tank. But it's like you've had like 3 pumps fail on this truck and you haven't had anything else replaced. There's a very good chance that we have metal material and debris somewhere else in the system, the fuel rail, the inject, somewhere, and this is just a violent, cycle that's just going to keep going until, you do essentially a complete contamination kit because there's nothing else physically going on mechanically with the truck because everything else is functioning the way that it's supposed to. So seeing that those pumps are starting to die, the Fords still really having the crankcase filter issue with them having oil consumption. But there is a company that is going to be coming out with a serviceable one. So everybody has seen that, that there are CCV delete kits, which they're not supposed to be done. It is kind of a gray area on where you can get those and if you can actually, have those installed, but to my know they're not supposed to be done. But the ones that we've seen, like customers that have had trucks that have come in, I mean, in general, those Fords seem to have a decent amount of haze. And they do put out quite a bit of engine or crankcase vapor. I can't tell you how many trucks we do have come in for diagnostic jobs for trying to find a smell that's coming into the cab. And after letting a truck sit and idle, and we're looking at kind of just engine fumes coming out from underneath the motor. We're like, where's that coming from? And we pop the hood, and they've got a crankcase filter delete, and call the customer. We're like, hey, that's that's what it is. And he's like, well, is it because it has too much blow by? And I'm like, well, I mean, they do have a little bit of it just because a lot of them do have excessive carbon buildup around the rings on the passenger side just because of the regen process of the rings after the main combustion cycle. The injectors will fire again when the exhaust valves and the head are open, but it only does it on the passenger side of the motor. It doesn't do it, it's not the passenger, I'm sorry. It only does it on the driver's side of the motor, not the passenger side. So we do tend, especially with where the crankcase filter is at, it's on the driver's side of the motor. So we do tend to get a little bit more fumes or, kind of vapor out that way. And it does, just go out into the cab because the hose just comes down right by the firewall there unless you extend it out behind the truck. But there is a company, we're not allowed to say who, that is making a serviceable item. So it is going to be a billet unit that is going to have the hose that goes from the case to, instead of having that plastic quick connect because those constantly break, it'll be a nicer hose that'll go to it, but the case itself, the element will be serviceable inside. So you won't be buying an entire, $200 to $300 crankcase filter. It'll actually have a serviceable element and something that you can service more on a regular basis if you felt like you needed to, just because they're supposed to be done once every 60 to 70,000 miles. But we've had some come in at like 30 or 40,000 that have to be done. That it just really depends on how much it idles, because that's really going to be the bigger problem there. And so when we have a decent amount of customers that have them idle a lot, which is going to be any kind of this city vehicle, construction, roadside, Forest Service, anything like that, all of those trucks do tend to sit and idle a significant amount of time, and they do tend to clog out those crankcase filters a lot quicker. So there is a company that is making that for the Ford. Another company that's making one for a 6.7 Dodge that we can say because their unit was at SEMA. So PPE Diesel. If you go on their social media, and I think that they had it covered on their social media this week, it is a billet. I think it's going to be a billet valve cover that goes on, and underneath it, when you flip it, the element that they will have on it looks very similar to like the round ones that were on the 5.9. So it's not necessarily going to be one of the bigger ones that is on the 6.7 now, but it will kind of be the same thing. It is going to be a serviceable element that will be significantly cheaper, and it is going to be identical to, I want to say, what the 5.9 ones were. So it's going to be something that you're going to be able to pick up at any parts house, Fleet Guard, Cummins, anywhere. So that is something that's going to be awesome, that is going to be able to filter out better than what the existing one was. Easier to service, and aesthetically pleasing. The cover itself is really nice. and that was out at PPE Diesel's booth at SEMA this last week. So that was something that is part of, I guess, the maintenance schedule there that should help cut down on the truck's oil consumptions, because we do still see with the Dodge and the Ford, they both still have the oil consumption issue, which does still stem from the regen process with how the injectors fire into the motor versus the exhaust like the Duramax.
Something you had mentioned, excuse me, on another episode, I think it was on the 6.7 Cummins, and you had mentioned that the front cover, there being some issues with them, like straight from the factory, and them having leaks. Connecting that to what you mentioned with the L5P injection pump, does it seem like it's more an OEM quality or
Yeah.
manufacturing issue versus a
Oh yeah.
design flaw?
Yes. Yeah. We had three 6.7 Cummins last month where taking off the front timing housing, um, like the gasket was rolled in. It was pinched. Just it was a manufacturing, it was an assembly flaw. They have the hardware is finger tight, like you can take it off. You don't even need to crack it loose. We have bolts that are backing out on one of the last 6.7 fifth gens that we did. We were doing the Hamilton flat tappet conversion kit, you know, rolled the engine. We're resealing everything in the bottom end, and the oil pickup tube, the bolts were backed out. Like one of them was about to fall out inside the damn pan. So on a lot of those, that's, that stuff is definitely an assembly issue. It's a production issue. It's just them just trying to get them out the damn door. Quality control. And then with the crankcase filters not being serviced when they're supposed to, you put any additional pressure on that system, it's just it's the cherry on the cake. And it's the same thing with the Fords. I can't tell you how many times we have them come in with an oil leak coming from the front of the engine, and we look down there and the vacuum pump cover is literally just damn near flopped off. It's just an afterthought. And it's one of the last parts, like on like the vacuum pump, like when we get a long block or a complete running assembly from Ford, they don't come with a vacuum pump. It's something that you have to install yourself. So it's just one of those last parts that get put on in the assembly that I just think it's thrown on the motor and out the damn door. But we do still see a lot of them, but as we've gotten into them, majority of it is 100% going to be, it is a production error, manufacturing flaw, quality control issue, 100%.
Hey, diesel fans, it's that time of year where cold temperatures can cause diesel fuel to gel or fuel filters to clog. Power Service Diesel Fuel Supplement plus cetane boost is designed to prevent fuel gelling, prevent fuel filters from icing, have faster cold starts with a cetane boost, and it contains a slick diesel lubricator to protect pump and injectors from wear. When temperatures drop below 30 degrees Fahrenheit, Power Service Diesel Fuel Supplement plus cetane boost will help keep your truck on the road. If you have untreated diesel fuel and the fuel filter has frozen or the fuel has gelled, Diesel 911 is an emergency use product to help get your truck up and running. It reliquefies gelled fuel, removes water, and de-ices frozen fuel filters. You can find Power Service Diesel Fuel Supplement plus cetane boost and Diesel 911 at local auto parts stores and online. Go to powerservice.com to learn more and use the Where to Buy feature to find a local retailer near you. Well, you've been in this industry for 2 decades, maybe a little longer, a little bit less, but right in that 20-year range. Is this something that is new? New in the sense of maybe the last 3, 4, 5 years? Has it always kind of been like this? Because I feel, just as somebody who consumes a lot of content, I hear more about issues with brand new trucks, or somebody actually commented on a recent short we had about the new 8-speed Ram, and he was
Yeah.
like, mine went out in like 4,000 miles. And my first thought is, yeah, that can always kind of happen with, a mass-produced vehicle, but I'm always really curious, is it more of a trend that you're seeing lately, of just production errors
It
impacting these trucks?
it's getting to be a higher percent for sure. I mean, before, I mean, it would probably less than 5%, but now it just seems like it's well into the 30s. And then just the quality of the parts that we're dealing with today as far as the raw material is involved. I mean, everybody always says your parents, your grandparents, they don't make stuff like they used to anymore. That's 100% accurate. As far as aluminum's concerned, steel's concerned, petroleum is concerned, the production of these raw products, they're not made the way that they were, which they can't be just because of the way the standards are for manufacturing, especially from our federal government. They can't be. So they are not going to be as good as they used to be. So that is true today as it was before. And they say, things aren't made like they used to be. They're not. Between just the quality of the parts and honestly, people caring, I would say, and the integrity of these companies. I mean, back in the day, I'd say it was fair to say Henry Ford and all that good stuff. They probably cared significantly more about the products than whatever board of financial advisors you have to deal with today. And you can see that 100% with a lot of companies, and I have with not going to say the wholesaler's name, but anybody that's in this industry is going to know specifically who I'm talking about. We have AWD that we've been dealing with since 2007. I've always bought from them. I will continue to try to buy from them, but they have been bought out and bought out again and bought out again. And you just get these financial companies and these investors that buy out these bigger companies and they obviously are looking at their bottom dollar, which that's why they're in business. That, I mean, I get that 100%, but they are destroying a market for that company when they do that because you do see the quality of either the product or the quality of the customer care or service that's put in to that to get stuff done. I mean, just for example, this company, again, we've been buying from them for almost 20 years now. I bought a part. I part went to Georgia. And for everybody who's listening, I'm in Oregon. And the company that's in Georgia, I got their part. Like, we don't even sell the same stuff. Like, they got my turbo, and I got a suspension for a Jeep. And, called our wholesaler and said, "Hey, I didn't get my turbo. I gotta have this thing in like a day, like 2 days. What do we got to do?" And they're like, "Well, what we could do is that we can charge you again for another turbo. We can overnight it to you, and then when we get this sorted out, we can get you a credit." And I'm like, "Let me tell you what we're not doing. We're not doing that. So what we're
Yeah.
not. We're not doing that." And they're like, "Okay, well, just send us pictures of what you got, for proof that you didn't get your part." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" And so, I mean, stuff like that. And then another company was owned, was mom and pops for a very long time. And they got out by another financial institution that owns five or six other companies. And, you kind of get into the same boat that way, where you have a product that you purchased, you have a problem with the product, and you call them and you're like, "Hey, how can we get this taken care of, as quickly as possible where, all parties are either benefiting or all parties are feeling like they lost something," because that's where everybody walks away in the same boat. And you are dealing with them now and they're like, "Well, no, that's not the way this is going to work." And I'm like, "The hell it isn't." I was like, "I'll go buy from somebody else. I spend $80,000 with you or more a year." It's like, I don't ever ask. I don't ever bug you much. But are starting to see that more and more. So these companies are not making the same product anymore because they can't, just because material's not there for the quality of it. And they are being swallowed up by these bigger financial institutions that are going to be more concerned about their bottom dollar, and they don't care, if this company doesn't work out, whatever, we need a tax write-off or we need to take a loss for, the next year. They don't care. And we have seen that with some larger wholesalers and a couple manufacturers this last year.
That's something that I don't think the average truck enthusiast even maybe knows about. They probably don't. But if you're
No.
around this industry for a while, and I can't unilaterally say this because I don't know, I'm just picking a few examples that I might be familiar with, is it's so disheartening because you can see this fantastic brand that you've known about for a really long time. And then all of a sudden, it's like you see them kind of pull away from involvement in the community a little bit, and
Hmm.
it starts to appear more corporate. And then you just don't, they feel disconnected from you. And then somebody might mention it to me, or I might see it, and I'm like, oh, they got bought out by someone else. And it's still the same name, but it might not still be the same product or the same service.
Right. It's like it's the same. I think the only company that I can say with uncertainty that has bought out another company and didn't trash it or ruin it, would be so Barry Carter from SMB. I love Barry. Love that entire team. I love that company. Love it, love it, love it. Um, he bought out a suspension company out of Oregon called One Up Off Road, who was owned by Dave. Uh, love Dave, love One Up Off Road. Barry bought that company out, and it is now, so like if you look on SMB's website, you'll see SMB has a new suspension company that was One Up Off Road. But they are still, it's the design of it, the engineering of it, still in Oregon. Dave is still overseeing a bunch of it. Just a lot of them, the bigger products that need to be mass produced. Barry is taking care of that on one of their other facilities for manufacturing. Um, I'd have to say Barry, yeah, SMB would probably be one of the only companies I can think of offhand that I can, within confidence, say that has not gone and purchased a company and diminished the quality of it. Either the intellectual property of it, the image of it, the quality of the product itself. He has not diminished it at all. He's added value to it. Um, oh, and Fass. That goes to Fass too. Love Brad. Same thing. Brad's bought out a few other companies too. Hat goes off to him. He's in that same boat. Didn't diminish the quality by any means, didn't degrade it, didn't cut value on it. He did nothing but add value to it. And in both cases, they, Barry and Brad had gone into, buying out these other companies and help those owners, out of a tight spot and still kept them on board and still kept a great product.
Yeah, that's something that I think gives people that are really into this or work in it hope when it's done like that, and the amazing products and things that they can do. I was just thinking of earlier when you were mentioning some of the issues that the OEMs like Ford or GM or Ram might have with production, and comparing that to the aftermarket. And I think maybe it's a generational thing. Like my parents' age, it was always like buy stock. Like go to the dealership, buy a stock part. It's the best part you're ever going to get. You
Yeah.
don't do anything aftermarket. But I've learned through 15 years in this that's not necessarily true, and especially the last 5 or 6 with,
Nope.
if I take Dynomite Diesel for example, and Lenny talking to me about his injectors and the time and the effort and the precision he puts into those. Me
Mhm.
personally, I would have more confidence in a set for my truck than I would be if I went down to the dealership and got some OEM parts. So I wanted to ask you about that a little bit, because I'm sure people come into the shop and you diagnose the truck and you say, hey, you need 8 new injectors or 6, or you need a new injection pump, and they might want to go OEM, but you know the history of both and how they perform over decades. How would you
So,
how would you address that?
so specifically, as far as let's say OEM fuel parts are concerned, um, my biggest thing with which for for Mr. Reed, Lenny makes this a very easy sell. Um, I love him to death. Hands down, his fuel products, a hill I will die on. We religiously sell them, and it's our first go-to. And I will beat you over the head with a 2x4 until I bend you to my will to what I would like to sell you. You would have to be as stubborn as I am for me to sell you something else, which good luck with that. But just for example, and we tell people, very easy, very, very, very easy. So OEM manufacturers, as far as fuel products are concerned, especially with injectors for balancing, they are about they're allowed to be within 7 or 5 bar of each other. And you go to the dealer, as a Cummins, or a Cummins isn't nearly as bad, so let's go with the Duramax. So this is specifically worse. You need 8 injectors, okay? It's a V8, it's an internally balanced motor. You need 8 injectors. That dealer is going to go to the shelf and they're going to pick out 8 stock injectors. Every single one of those injectors has a different balance rate. Which is and why they just can grab 8 off a shelf because they're allowed to be within 5 to 7 bar of each other. Now, Dynamite Diesel doesn't do that. I need 8 injectors. So I call the shop and I talk to any of the boys there. I talk to Mike, I talk to Tim, like, whatever. I need 8 injectors. They're going to pull my 8 injectors and they're going to balance them. They just don't pull 8 off the shelf and throw in a box and send them to me. They're going to get balanced as a set. They are going to be within, I want to say, they are 2 bars of each other. And then, do I have any here? No, I don't have any sitting here. But then you get a flow sheet sent with you with those injectors. So you don't have to program them if you don't want to. But like if you do an aftermarket set or any of his Patriot sets or 50 horsepower, 90 horsepower, you can take that flow sheet and you send it to your tuner if you have one, and they will program into your fuel trimming for you so you can kind of get the best bang of your buck. And everybody is always going to ask that. Do I have to program or retune my truck for these injectors? You don't have to. But if you want what the back of the box says, this added potential fuel economy, horsepower, torque, blah, 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 blah. All of that is only possible with the tuning that is done. But that is the biggest thing with being able, it's very, very easy for us to push an aftermarket fuel company, specifically like Dynamite Diesel, and he made it very easy for me to sell it. He made it very easy because you are getting a set that is a match set. I'm not just getting a random set of stock thrown together and put in a truck. And that is true to a Cummins or they don't do all Fords, Ford injectors, but like 6, 7 Fords, it's the same thing. I get a set, it's been balanced, they're matched, and I have a flow sheet, and we can see blatantly on the flow sheet, so you're not, having to take just their word for it, which I'm more than happy to do that. But obviously, you're all having to convince a customer of this as well, but you get a flow sheet that you can show them that they're balanced. This is a matching set for your truck. And that makes it a little bit more easier, that there's more quality control put into those parts than anything at the dealer. That, and he's priced better significantly by like a lot. You look up a 5th-gen Cummins injector from the dealer, like $1,500 for one. You can get them from DDP for, I think it's under like $800 or $900 for one.
That
And
kind
you
of
get,
that kind of information is really, really helpful for, I think, people who aren't in this industry but have a truck and they have to service it or something happens. Is they don't have this kind of information or know it. Like if I needed an AC condenser and I had a Ram truck, I'd get it from Ram or something with the brakes or something like that. I'm just going to go with
yeah.
OEM. But in my mind, when it comes to fuel systems, probably even a turbo. I'm not
Hmm.
talking race turbos or anything like that, but like a stock replacement. Um, yeah, probably even transmissions as well. There's these certain core parts of a truck where I would personally trust the aftermarket more and the accountability. Like,
Right.
sure, if you do have an issue, you can call them up and they take care of you and get it to you versus dealing with this huge monstrous company known as, one of the big three is a lot tougher.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I mean, and that's same thing goes true to the turbos too. Or at least like for our shop, we only have a handful of brands that we are remotely willing to sell. We'll have a ton of people come in, especially specifically with like the 6.7 Cummins turbo, because they are more expensive turbo as far as, they're concerned. And we'll have a bunch of people come in like, oh, well, I can get it from this site, for this much money, or I can go here, or I can go there. And I'm like, yeah, you sure can. Let me know that works out. Because when that thing has a problem, you're about to be super pissed. And you're going to have a really hard time trying to get any of that stuff taken care of because you have so many XYZ factors on that truck that control that turbo, specifically like with the actuator. Um, I mean, the actuators on those, they are electric. They are super finicky. Like if they're if the coolant on that truck wasn't drained right or filled right, um, if it gets anywhere close to that actuator, you've just destroyed it. The exhaust back pressure, well, they call it I think it's the EGR. They call it the EGR exhaust back pressure sensor and tube. It's on the front of the exhaust manifold that comes off there. We have a ton of people like, well, my truck, that's not on my truck. I'm like, okay, maybe that one part isn't, but that tube and that sensor certainly is, or it better be, because that's why your turbo's not frickin' working. And we had that happen a bunch of times. There were some customers that had some parts removed off their truck at some other shops, and they took a part off that you're not supposed to take off. It's supposed to stay on the damn truck because that exhaust back pressure tube and sensor takes the pressure metering out of your exhaust manifold, and that sensor sends that information to your ECM, and that ECM takes that information, and that's how it determines how and where it can place your vanes in your turbo for your exhaust brake. Like we've had multiple people come in that have had their turbos replaced or actuators replaced at other shops, and because their exhaust brake wasn't working, and they come in and they're like, it's still not working. I've had a new turbo put on, I've had a new actuator, I've had my tuning changed, I've had this done, and we pop the hood and we're like, where's your back pressure tube and sensor? Well, that's part of the EGR. I don't need that. Yes, you do, sir, because that's not part of the EGR. That's how your turbo works. If that sensor's not in there, the ECM doesn't know where to position your vanes at. And that just comes back down to training classes and courses on the new products, and specifically, I mean, everybody asks Matt and I, how was the show? And we're like, well, I'm pretty sure it was pretty good, but we didn't really. I honestly spent less than 2 hours actually at the show, like walking around like the show. Um, it was just going to classes and courses, having a finite understanding of how the vehicle and the truck works. That and then these same customers actually went to the dealer and was trying to get this figured out, and the dealer couldn't sort it out because they don't even understand that that is a part that that truck has to have in order for that turbo to function properly. It's coming back down to not having the quality of information or people or technicians. And I guess the same thing goes for parts. When you call these companies and you tell them you have this part put on the truck and it's still not working, and they tell you, oh, okay, do a boost check, check the codes, check, the voltage to that sensor, make sure, because unlike the newer Cummins, it's not a 5-volt system, it's a 12-volt system. Isn't getting proper voltage. And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And everybody's like, well, I don't know why it's not working. Miss the damn sensor and tube. because somebody was a jackwagon and told you you didn't need that.
Yeah. That kind of leads into, I think, another question, maybe the last question I have for you, because I know you're busy. But I think might tie in a little bit. Is how do you guys approach it when a customer comes in and they say, I'll supply the parts, will you guys do the work? As I think this is really important to understand how the diagnosing, the parts, the relationships you guys have pertain to service and maintenance. Like, just my limited knowledge is I can ask some shop owners I know and they'll rant for an hour with me about why they don't do that. Like, they want to do the parts and they want to make sure that's what basically exactly what you need. What's your opinion on that as far as a truck coming in the shop?
So usually the first thing I'll segue into with the customer is, why do you want to supply your own parts? You know, do you already have them? You know, did you buy them on sale? You know, did you buy them last year when there was like a Black Friday sale? Do you just not want to buy them here? You don't want your wife to know that you're buying them? Like, you know, what? That's usually the first question is, why do you want to supply the parts? Um, are you a just like instant chopper? You know, were you lying in bed one night because you couldn't sleep and you saw that there was a 10% off sale and you bought the turbo? You know, like what was it? If it's something like that, I mean, sometimes you will. It is very, 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 very rare. Like if somebody doesn't have the parts yet, no, piss off. You absolutely have to buy them from me. There's no reason why you should have to buy them somewhere else because, I mean, A, I'm in Oregon. I don't have sales tax. I get free shipping. That part has MAP. Okay, you found a website that's selling the part under MAP. Let me give you some information that you are not aware of, and this website's not going to tell you because they don't care because they're not a brick and mortar store. They are e-commerce. They do not care if this part has an issue. So 99% of these companies today that have MAP pricing on their product, they do that to keep the market fair for the brick and mortar shops. They do not do this for e-commerce. They do not do that. They do that for us to keep, you know, to keep everything competitive. But the other part of that is, if you read the fine print, if you purchase their product for under MAP pricing, you don't have a warranty. You do not have one. You are SOL, up a creek, out of paddle, whatever you want to call it. Um, I will get into that with them. And I mean, I'll pull it up and show it on their website. I'm like, if you buy that product, you really want to save $5 on a $5,000 product and not have your 3-year warranty. In all honesty, I don't know if I want to deal with you as a customer because you don't sound that bright. You sound like you might have to be a customer that I'm going to fire lately. And I have fired customers. I mean, there are certain customers we just, it's no, 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 no. I'm not dealing with you anymore. Um, but it's very, very rare that I will let a customer walk in with a product that I will install. There are a handful of products that I really do like that I'm not a dealer for just because the buy-in part of it that I'm more than happy to have my customer walk in with. I'm totally fine with that. As far as, let's say the customer already has the part because they were shopping online at midnight or something, or they were drunk shopping. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. You know, you're laying in bed after getting home and you're like, oh, look at that. I'm gonna buy this. And it's in a situation like that, I will install it, but if you have a problem with the said product, I'm not helping you for free because and explain that to a customer. Our markup in a product pays me to cover any kind of warranty issues that the product manufacturing wise is going to have. You will have a not a manufacturer's, but you'll have a craftsmanship warranty with me on the install of the product. I will still give you that. But as far as taking care of and helping you on warranty of the product itself has a problem, you will have to pay me hourly. I'm not doing that for free. So we handle it by a case by case basis, depending on the customer and the product.
That makes sense. I think I can definitely understand the inclination to want to save some money, but like the map situation you mentioned, I know some companies are very strict on it. Like Fass is one of them that
Oh
jumps out to
God.
me, and they have been for a long time. And it's like
Have
it's
you
not.
seen Brad's when Brad does his roasts?
No,
Have you not seen that?
no.
Oh, it's good. He hasn't done them in a long time. But for a while there, if a company would if a shop would void map, uh Brad at like the end of the week on a Friday, it's been a while, but he would do a roast on the shops that violated his map, which you get a warning. Like you get a couple warnings. You just don't get dropped. Like you have to be like a repeat offender, and it's funny. If you can find them, like
I think I'll do
watch
that
them.
later. Yeah, I'll go back through some social media and see if I can find those. Um, that's a really good point. I was always just kind of curious how you guys handled it. I think most shops are like that as
Mhm.
well. One, I mean, the big thing is to make sure you're getting the right part, and
Yeah,
then
that's yeah.
that's going to work for what you want to do. And then also as a
Did
truck
you
owner,
open the box? Did you open it up? Did you leave a part at home? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, stuff like that. Well, that's really cool. I was glad I could catch up with you today. I was really curious about SEMA when you told me you were there. Really, more so for what you described. Like the show side is kind of cool, but I mean, this is just my opinion. Is I've seen that stuff for 15 years, so the
Yeah,
cool builds and stuff. Like
same thing.
I know how to find them, but it's like, what are they doing for the industry? How are you guys able to interact with it, prepare for the future, and then also kind of recap, issues with trucks and I can't overemphasize what you mentioned with the aftermarket OEM quality and brands that you like, parts that you like because they're better. And I don't think that's talked about enough in automotive at all is how these aftermarket companies, some of them are really precise and they're accountable to you and they're involved with the industry and they have a vested interest. And if there is an issue, which can happen to anyone, you can just pick up the phone or send an email and get
Mhm.
it resolved. And
Yeah, like I think the company that's invested probably the most between last year and this year that I love hands down, and I always find time or make time to see them whenever I'm in Indiana or when I see them in SEMA is Fleece. Fleece Performance Products is the best. They have, I mean, they've expanded that warehouse that they have to like, I think it's like 270,000 square feet. They more than like tripled the size of it. The amount of new machines that they have in there, and they're going to be automated too. So they'll run at night. So they won't just be something that'll have to be manned during the day. They will have, they will be able to run at night. So their production's going to go through the roof. They had just bought their own foundry. So they're going to be able to manufacture a ton of their own stuff now that they weren't already doing. And they're having that built next to, they bought the big piece of property that's next to their facility that they have now, and they're moving that boundary next to them. John just said that when we saw them at SEMA, but they are constantly doing R&D. They're constantly doing testing. They are I mean, and they're always looking for feedback and information from shops. Fleece is one of those companies and the products that we sell a ton of that we love. We'll always, stand behind. Barry from SMB is going to be the same thing. Love him. We'll always stand behind that product. Lenny from Dynomite Diesel, same thing. Hill I Will Die On. We'll always stand behind that. Dirty Hooker Diesel. Those guys are amazing. I don't feel like they get talked about enough, especially for their Duramax platforms and their motors that they're doing. Like they just got into huge building too. I don't think a lot of people realize that Tony Burkhart just moved into a massive building. And their Duramax program for their motors, it's awesome. Like, if anybody's watching this, and if you guys haven't looked into Dirty Hooker Diesel, if you have a motor, you really need to because you're really sleeping on that right now. Um, it's amazing. There's a ton of these companies that are, I mean, people haven't seen a lot of them lately, and that's because they have been really investing in kind of blowing up this year. And I think we'll probably start seeing a lot of them next year. Like Fleece has been obviously focusing on, they're always R&D and production and stuff like that, but with their new foundry that they have and the expansion of their building, they are going to be doing a ton of stuff next year. Same thing with Dirty Hooker Diesel. They just massively expand. I think just got into this one. Um, it's going to be, I think they're going to be seeing some pretty big stuff from those guys this next year. I'm excited because
I
I'm
did.
going to have better products. There's nothing that makes me happier.
I did an episode earlier this year with Braden Fleece, and they had a camera and basically walked me around part of the facility. And I
Yeah.
got to see this piece of metal or aluminum turned into a compressor cover and the robotics that were
Mhm.
involved with it. And it was probably one of the most powerful podcasts I ever did to see it and to see how it's going to work. And I think the technology behind it. So that was something that
And
afterwards I
that's
was like, this is
just a
crazy.
compressor cover.
Yeah.
And that's before the foundry that they bought. Like they're going to be doing a ton of stuff. Like I was kicking the guy that owns the company this week, that they had gone into business with on it. And I'm like, well, what are you guys thinking about an aluminum Duramax block? And he's like, yeah, we can make it. I'm like, and he's like, you just got to talk to those guys about getting it in production. Like they're going to be able to do that soon, very, very soon.
It's so
Um,
cool.
it's going to be possible. They're gonna have that capability. Um, so that's awesome. Like, and a lot of people don't realize that that will be a possibility with what they had purchased and what they're building and what they're investing in. Um, it's going to be exciting because we're going to have, they already make a good quality product, but their catalog of it is about to really, double in size.
I'm gonna have to bug them this week to do a podcast with me. So I'll tell them you mentioned them on the podcast, and I need to speak with them. And
Yeah, tell John that you need to talk about the new foundry that they're buying and what they're going to be able to do.
okay, I'll definitely do that. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer
Yeah,
than I have, Kat. But I appreciate your time today. It was awesome to chat with you, as it always is. Appreciate the insights, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from me again. If you hear anything or you start seeing stuff, let me
yeah,
know. Reach out to me, and
absolutely.
love to chat with you again.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 20 TDP 2026 to get 20% off your cart. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, or around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different handle designs, different opening mechanisms, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So again, if you're in the market, head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code 20 TDP 2026 for 20% off your shopping cart. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Robert, TSW Diesel, Brian, John, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps, follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.